surpass, penetrating and perfect Dharma, is rarely met with, even in 100,000 million kalpas. Having it to see and listen to, remember and accept, I vow to taste the truth of Dharma's words.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Now, there are 5 of us here at the Zen Center who rotate giving these Dharma talks. And I've noticed that most of us, including myself, we all have our own specific themes that we keep coming back to and talk about. So that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to revisit a theme that I've talked about before, but hopefully in a new way. So I mentioned before that, back in the autumn of 2019, I started experiencing these irregular heartbeats. And since then, I've had tests, I've been on medication for a while, and I did a lot of reading on my own about the heart. It has since settled down, and I no longer take any medication for it, and it doesn't bother me as much anymore, but it's not completely gone away. And the doctors say that they can see these irregularities on tests, but they say that these are fairly common and the causes of which cannot be exactly identified. So in the opinion of the last cardiologist I saw, he said my irregularities are not severe enough or dangerous to warrant anything being done about them or even being on any medication. So it's just live with it if you can. So that's what I've been doing, and that's been okay. But every once in a while I do see an acupuncturist, and I see him for various reasons, and one of the reasons is for my irregular heartbeat. And we usually have a good discussion before we start the treatment. And in one of our discussions, he brought up the suggestion that I might have a particular sensitivity to my environment, and that my irregular heartbeat could be my body's response to the environment. And I came across a similar suggestion in one of the books I read. The author, who was also a cardiologist, suggested that the body, in particular the heart, is not isolated from the external environment, but rather is interconnected with it, and the environment can influence how our body responds. And the aspect of this that makes it most intriguing to me is that this bodily response seems to be outside the realm of my conscious awareness. The body, and I also include the subconscious mind in this, seems to be sensing and responding to something that my conscious mind is not recognizing. I may think I know what's going on, but so far, most of the time when I try to deal with what I think is going on, it hasn't helped. It's like I'm still missing something. Now, all of this has been occurring during COVID-19 and the social, political, and environmental extremes we're in the midst of. So ever since the autumn of 2019, I've been experiencing new bodily sensations that I have never experienced in my life prior to that time. And whenever one of these situations arises, I find myself wondering if I have COVID. Is it something to do with my heart? Is it a response to the environment or something else? I don't know. So this seeming mystery of what the body and subconscious mind are sensing and responding to that my conscious mind is not recognizing has been and still is an interesting area of investigation for me. Back in June, guest teacher Paul Jaffe gave a Dharma talk here. He was in Des Moines to co-lead a retreat with another group over at David's place on a Buddhist sutra from the Pali Canon titled The Mindfulness of Breathing. And the talk that Paul gave here at the Zen Center wasn't specifically on this sutra, but he did make some references to it. And at one point in his talk, and I don't remember the exact context, but he said 3 words that really stuck with me. He said, "The body knows." And hearing that just made me want to explore this even further. So I had two good additional conversations with Paul, and he suggested a book from one of his teachers that was a commentary on the Mindfulness of Breathing Sutra. And the book is titled The Breath of Awakening, A Guide to Liberation Through Mindfulness of Breathing. And the author is a now deceased Canadian teacher named Namgyal Rinpoche. He was ordained in the Buddhist traditions of Southeast Asia and Tibet and founded the Dharma Center of Canada. So over the past couple of months, I've read and studied this teaching on the mindfulness of breathing. So I'd like to share some of this with you today. This teaching isn't exactly, or it isn't explicitly addressing my investigation into the dynamics between the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, and the body, but it seems like it's helpful in some way. So David, this might be, you might hear heard some of this before. So Namgyal Rinpoche says that breathing is a universal path to awakening. Be patient, slow down, and let it liberate you. To perfect the path of liberation, see the correlation between body, breath, and mind. If any one is disturbed, the others are disturbed. If any one is calm, the others are calm. At the beginning of the Mindfulness of Breathing Sutra, the Buddha says, "Monks, when mindfulness of breathing is developed and cultivated, it is of great fruit and great benefit. When mindfulness of breathing is developed and cultivated, it fulfills the four foundations of mindfulness. When the four foundations of mindfulness are developed and cultivated, they fulfill the seven enlightenment factors. When the seven enlightenment factors are developed and cultivated, they fulfill true knowledge and deliverance." That's the end of the Buddha's quote. So this statement is in typical early Buddhist fashion in that we have a sequence of cause and effect relationships. Namgyal Rinpoche uses the term unfoldment. Things unfold naturally if the proper sequence is followed. The order is very important. So technically, this teaching describes a sitting meditation practice, which is different from what we practice here. So I'm not suggesting that we change how we practice, but I thought there was a lot of helpful information in this teaching, so I just wanted to share some of it with you, and if any of it resonates with you, perhaps you can incorporate it into your own life in your own unique way. So the teaching follows a sequence based on the four foundations of mindfulness. The first stage in the sequence is the first foundation of mindfulness, which is mindfulness of the body. This first stage is devoted to establishing physical calm. Establishing physical calm first is important because it provides a foundation of ease for the natural unfoldment of the second stage, which involves calming the energy levels from which feelings develop. Namgyal Rinpoche says it is very customary for us to try and establish physical calm by first establishing calm or pleasant feelings, such as by listening to music, reading poetry, watching a pleasant TV show, etc. We try to calm the feelings first, which we hope will then lead to calming the body. But the Mindfulness of Breathing Sutra teaches the sequence the other way around. Calm the body first. This will then naturally lead to a calming of the feelings. Calming the body is accomplished by simply paying attention to the breath. Start with paying attention to the individual in-breath and out-breath. Simply notice if they are long or short. You're not trying to control anything. You're just watching how the breathing is naturally unfolding. This engages the first of the 7 factors of enlightenment, which is awareness. Eventually bring your awareness to experience the whole breath, the complete cycle of in-breath and out-breath. This teaching says this simple practice of bringing the awareness to the breath will calm the, quote, physical formation. And using the term physical formation takes the I out of the picture. It's not you or I that is breathing. It is the body that is breathing. The body breathes on its own. Namgyal Rinpoche teaches to bring your awareness to see that everyone around you is also breathing. The whole room is breathing. Every living thing is breathing. The whole planet is breathing. The whole universe participates in the cycle of inflow and outflow. Because the body is not separate from the universe, it manifests the laws of the universe. Engaging the enlightenment factor of awareness to the breath will calm the physical formation and naturally unfold into the second stage. The second foundation of mindfulness is mindfulness of feelings. The second stage is devoted to establishing emotional calm. Feelings develop from energy levels. The word breath in Sanskrit is prana, P-R-A-N-A, but prana also means energy. So this is, Namgyal Rinpoche says, when we insert the letter J from the Sanskrit word jati, which means birth, prana becomes prajna, or what we translate as wisdom. When you know the birth of an energy, its origin, you have wisdom. And Aristotle said the same thing. He said, to know something is to know the cause of it. So the second stage contacts the energy body. The breath is the thread that weaves all of these stages together. Awareness of the breath is always maintained throughout all of these stages. As the physical formation becomes calm from the first stage, emotional energy becomes more clearly experienced and it begins to calm down. Sukha, Sanskrit, which is the opposite of dukkha, begins to arise. Sukha literally means good formation. It is an open, pleasant, wholesome mental state, a state of satisfaction or all-rounded easefulness. You don't have to try and make Sukha happen. It will unfold on its own when the physical formation is calmed down. In the first half of the second stage, we experience or rest in physical calm. Then we rest in the emotional calm that naturally unfolds from the physical calm. In the second half of the second stage, we now begin to engage the second of the 7 enlightenment factors, which is investigation. We experience that our emotional calm may not remain steady, but gets disturbed by internal thoughts, dialogues, and emotional movements. We watch or investigate this. Namgyal Rinpoche says, when we experience these mental or emotional formations that disturb the sukha we previously experienced, do not identify with them. Simply realize them as dukkha, or suffering. Then he gives this interesting description of the word dukkha. Du, means bad or unpleasant or unwholesome. The K and KHA, ka, both refer to formation. While dukkha is usually translated as suffering, he says the sound of the word gives you the real clue to its meaning. and then he writes it out with DU-K-KHA, so it's like du-ka-ka. He says it's a stuttering formation, or a formation fighting against openness, as opposed to sukha, which is easeful, effortless, and open forming. Through awareness and investigation, we see these disturbances to our emotional energy as empty intruders. And the final step in the second stage is simply to let them go. Calming is letting go. Many times our emotions are tied to the environment we are in. Namgyal Rinpoche says, calming the emotional formation is calming our relationship with the environment. So with the physical and emotional formations calmed, we come to stage 3, the third foundation of mindfulness, which is mindfulness of mind, or mindfulness of mental states. With the physical and emotional formations calmed, we can now see more clearly the overall state of the mind at the present moment. Namgyal Rinpoche uses the term texture. What is the texture of the mind? For example, when I apply this to myself, the textures that I seem to identify the most are ones of either frustration or satisfaction, of being under pressure or relaxed, of craving or detachment, or of being confined or free. These are mental formations. It is here where Namgyal Rinpoche says we can shape our future. When we can see all these formations arise and pass away, we will see the mind come to complete stillness, serene focus. This is tranquility, another of the 7 factors of enlightenment. This is great, but it's not the end. From that base of tranquility, where all disturbances have been calmed, now we need to wake up the mind. The source of the mind's aliveness, its energizer, according to the teaching, is gladness or joy. We wake up the mind by initiating glad activity. This is more than just happiness. It is the mind of wholesome activity. This is training in how to pour happiness into the mind from a state of serenity. You are deliberately bringing happiness into the breath body. We infuse our breathing with happiness. Notice how we are still maintaining awareness of the breath in all of this. So here's another example of how I try to apply this. I could look at preparing a Dharma talk with a negative or aversive attitude. It's difficult. What will I talk about? It'll take a lot of time to prepare. Or I could practice infusing happiness into my breathing while I'm preparing the talk. I could think, I could look at it in a way that I can hopefully help people, or as an opportunity to be like a craftsman and use the tool of skillful means to create something unique and of value. And this infusion of joy, which, by the way, is another of the 7 enlightenment factors, automatically unfolds to more of the enlightenment factors, the factor of energy and the factor of concentration. And I don't think there's any mystery in this. I think it's a common experience that when we find joy in something, we have energy to do it, and we can absorb ourselves in it. There's a couple of footnotes here on the word concentration. Namgyal Rinpoche says, when us Westerners say concentration, we immediately manifest a picture of ourselves sitting with slit eyes and furrowed brows, all the while admonishing others, saying, "Go away, you're bothering me. Can't you see I'm concentrating?" In the East, there's quite a different feeling of concentration. It has more the meaning of absorption. You're not trying to concentrate, you are absorbed in something of interest. When the word concentration is used in the teaching, it means absorbed in an object conducive to awakening. The issue is not losing concentration, but more important, staying absorbed on a wholesome object. We can ask ourselves, what is occupying my consciousness? Is it conducive to awakening? So waking up the mind through joy, energy, and concentration are expressed in the Zen phrase, polishing the bright mirror so no dust can alight. The final step in this third stage is to liberate the mind. This is experiencing the non-clinging, non-abiding mind, non-clinging awareness. This is the last of the 7 factors of enlightenment, equanimity. As a feather is blown by the wind, the mind abides nowhere. And this is the experience of boundlessness or letting go. And it's expressed in the second, and in the other Zen phrase, where there is no bright mirror, where can dust alight? So here's a summary of the third stage. The infusion of joy naturally activates energy and concentration. Then we liberate the mind through non-clinging awareness. And the foundation for all of this to happen is the experience of a calm mind. So then finally we come to the fourth of the 4 foundations of mindfulness, which is mindfulness of mental objects. In this stage, you look at objects and what objects do to you, how they turn you on or off, or how they attract or repel you. The word objects can be anything, like experiences, people, material things, thoughts, opinions, etc. Namgyal Rinpoche suggests a way we can measure where we are in the realization of no self. He says, quote, "You may have attained the correct state as far as the subject you is concerned, but you are not able to maintain that state until you are able to neutralize objects in consciousness. That is, until you are no longer turned on or off by them." The prior 3 stages were devoted to establishing physical, emotional, and mental calm. This 4th stage is devoted to developing insight. To develop insight, you must slow down. The law of liberation is slow down. Insight is developed through mindfulness of the 3 seals of Buddhism, which are impermanence, suffering, or the word I like to use is unsatisfactoriness, and no self. These are expressed in the first 3 steps of this 4th stage. The first step is contemplating the impermanence of things. Nothing is so conducive to suffering as trying to make the impermanent permanent. Namgyal Rinpoche suggests that a measure of how well impermanence really touches our lives is based on how deep our perception is of how quickly things move and change. Kurt had a great experience of that this week, which I'll let him tell you about downstairs afterwards. The second step is contemplating the fading away of desire or aversion to objects. When we realize the ultimate unsatisfactoriness of objects, their hold on us fades. Namgyal Rinpoche says this is the fading away of the investiture of libido that we put onto objects, to undye the color we have put onto things. There is a difference between seeing pleasantness in a rose and projecting romanticism on it. He also says that things are more colorful, the more ego is there. So this is another way of measuring our progress in realizing himself.
You say it again. Things are more colorful than
He says, he also says that things are more colorful, the more ego is there. So this is another way of measuring our progress in realizing no self. And then he finally reminds us that it is not the object or the mind that enslaves us. It is our response that enslaves us. The continuous contemplation of fading away will naturally unfold into final cessation, the absence of enslavement to objects and their effect on us. The contemplation of the cessation of desire or aversion to objects is the third step in this fourth stage. This corresponds to the realization of no self, that all things have no intrinsic existence. Liberation does not come from a state of desire nor of hate, but through liberation from the object and its power over you. The foundation for this power is the calm, clear, non-clinging mind. Then the final step in this stage is contemplating relinquishment. That is, contemplation of knowing that you are now free of an object's hold on you. Namgyal Rinpoche says, if you look at relinquishment as negative, it's because you have identified with the process of attraction and aversion. This is another measure of your progress in the realization of no self. So the Buddha acknowledged his own relinquishment when he said, I have found you, O builder. You will build no more. So I know this was a lot of information. So just in summary, step number one, maintain awareness of the breath. This will naturally calm the body. A calm body will unfold and calm the emotional energy. With the body and emotional energy calmed, see and calm the overall mental state, then wake it up with joy, energy, concentration, and detachment. And finally, then liberate yourself from the hold objects have on you.
Page 12 or 19 online.
May the narratives penetrate to each thing in all places, so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha way. Sentient beings are numberless. I vow to save them. Desires are inexhaustible. I vow to put an end to them. The dharmas are boundless. I vow to master them. The Buddha's way is unsurpassable. I